Ghana is a major cocoa and gold exporter. So why is the West African nation battling its worst economic crisis in decades? Ghana, a country once described as Africa's shining star by the World Bank, had the world's fastest growing economy in 2019 after it doubled its economic growth. But today, it is no longer the economic poster boy of West Africa. Despite being a major cocoa and gold exporter, it is currently battling its worst financial crisis in decades with inflation, hovering at a record 50%, the highest in 21 years. Ghana's economic successes were in the limelight when the new government of President Nana Akufo-Addo took power in January 2017 and brought down inflation significantly. Under the previous government in 2016, it was 15.4%, and it fell to 7.9% by the end of 2019 and remained in single digits until the pandemic hit in 2020. The president conceded in a recent address to the nation that the West African country is in crisis. He blamed the situation on external shocks, the pandemic in Russia, Ukraine war. However, analysts say the government took certain political and economic decisions that would have eventually exposed the weaknesses in the system, even without those external factors. For instance, to fulfill one of Akufo-Addo's most expensive campaign pledges, his government launched a free education program in public high schools 9 months after he took office. It also provided free meals for primary and secondary school students. But today, hundreds gather the streets in protest over harsh economic conditions. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered outside of Jubilee House, Ghana's presidential palace in the capital Accra, and were met by heavily armed officers who arrested 49 people. Police said in a statement that some protesters were arrested for the flagrant disregard of a court process served on the organizers. Democracy Hub, who countered that the process had not resulted in an injunction stopping them from demonstrating. Protests over economic hardship and rising inflation in Ghana are soaring as people in their hundreds throng the streets to express their displeasure over the country's situation. The demonstration, according to reports, was a 2-day protest led by local lobby group Arise Ghana, intended to denounce the economic hardships. Protesters said bystanders dressed in black and red, the colors associated with the anti-government cost of living protesters, were also arrested. They were among several journalists detained by police and have since been released. At a police station where protesters were held, the protesters said they were simply arrested for exercising their democratic rights. President Akufo-Addo's government has claimed the country's economic woes are a consequence of the impact of the pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has contributed to rising inflation in several countries around the world. But in Ghana, many have blamed the government for economic mismanagement and criticized spending on unpopular, expensive projects, such as a new 5,000-capacity national cathedral commissioned by the government and costing over $400 million. In May, Ghana signed a bailout loan with the International Monetary Fund worth $3 billion, its 17th financial rescue from the IMF since 1957. The Occupy BOG protest, organized by the Minority Caucus in Parliament, seeks to voice their displeasure with the way the Bank of Ghana manages its resources. The protest is a symbol of their commitment to holding authorities accountable and advocating for transparency and responsible resource management on behalf of the Ghanaian people. Last year, protests over soaring prices and other economic challenges led to clashes with police. The government sealed a $3 billion 3-year loan program with the International Monetary Fund in May, but detractors say the authorities have done too little to help those struggling to make ends meet amid the protracted downturn. Economic growth is forecast to slow to 1.5% this year from 3.1% in 2022.